even when the world is quite literally falling apart around us, it's always good to stop and take some time to just tune everything out. Focus on yourself, focus on the things that you enjoy, and yeah, we're just to show that it's not all the end is nigh. Kanon and I are going to be taking a break from the sordid affairs of the world and just focus on culture today. We're going to focus on entertainment, which, ironically enough, is the most dystopian thing that you can do when you live in a dystopia. The irony is completely lost on us here at the Electric Luchador Podcast.
Completely lost.
I am El Oscuro, the Electric Luchador, though you may know me by some other names, and I am here with Kanon.
Hello.
All right, so like I said, this is going to be a culture-only episode today. No current events, no crazy shit happening.
No hellscape.
Yeah. Yeah, so one thing that I've been wanting to talk about, given that it's, the Electric Luchador Podcast, is professional wrestling.
You're into it, man. It's your thing.
Oh, man. And let me tell you, it's been quite a year between WrestleMania last year and WrestleMania this year. It's been a hell of a year for the WWE. Like, I mean, okay, so last year's WrestleMania, in a huge, earth-shattering, never-before-seen, once-in-a-lifetime event, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar headlined for the third year in a row, and Roman unified the titles. So Kanon, when it comes to the championship belts for the WWE programming, the two main shows, SmackDown and Raw, have their own sets of belts. Basically a top, upper card, this is the belt that you want to win belt, a mid card belt, a tag team belt, a set of tag team belts. And then for the women's division, they have one singles championship belt and one tag team belt. And the tag team belt for the women's division is shared across both shows. So for one wrestler to win the two upper card belts is a big thing. So which one was the one that he already had? I want to say he already had the heavyweight championship, the world heavyweight championship, which is the black belt for those of you at home. And then he won the universal championship, which is the blue belt, off of Brock Lesnar. And I'm going to go ahead and send some pictures here to Kanon so he could see what I'm talking about.
So can I ask, as kind of a novice in terms of all of the the world of professional wrestling, I was always under the impression that it's kind of it's and don't take this the wrong way, but it's scripted. Like there's writers that are going to decide what's going to happen.
Right.
How much do the actual wrestlers, do they have? I mean, if they're acting and they have to kind of put the show on, they have knowledge of what's going to happen, or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the way that it's normally handled is that it's okay, so in a perfect world, the wrestlers as actors have their input to say like, oh, this is what I want for my character, et cetera, et cetera. This is how my character would act. Whatever, the writers take that into account, and then from there they make the storylines and they decide, just for marketing reasons and drama and all that, okay, this person's gonna win, this is how it's gonna happen, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
The WWE is very well known for not being that.
Right.
And so so the picture I just sent you is Roman Reigns with the two belts. Beautiful belt designs. I love those belts so much. Oh god. Okay, but but yeah. Now the outcomes are predetermined,
Sure.
but the wrestlers are expected to be able to adjust their performances in case there's changes mid-match.
Gotcha.
In
So
which case,
they
that's
can get. Go
oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's communicated to the referees, and then the referees communicate that to the wrestlers. Because if you watch a wrestling match, you can see them like signal each other and whisper things to each other and all that as the performance goes on.
So sometimes there's changes that they kind of throw at the last second.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
There's a video, a pretty well known video from oh god, it's from I don't know how many years ago it's from, but Brock Lesnar was initially supposed to lose a match at one of their events, and he was supposed to lose the belt. And in the middle of the match, Vince McMahon was like, "No, scrap it, have him win it." So they had to adjust the match on the fly, have Brock Lesnar win, and he was so incensed at the loss of what was supposed to be the other wrestler's opportunity to to get some pedigree in that sense, no pun intended. As soon as they got backstage, like someone filmed this on their phone, he throws the belt at Vince and calls him a jackass and just storms out.
Great Brock Lesnar did?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, so that's what we've been going with. Now, pretty soon after that, all of this shit came out with Vince McMahon being a pervert and all that. And so he was basically ousted from the company, and Triple H took over all of the creative decisions, and it resulted in one of the best years of programming that the WWE had in a long time.
Interesting.
Long time. And it's because Vince is very set in his ways. I mean, what old man isn't?
Sure.
But like he has, from the beginning, from when he first bought the company from his father in like the early 80s, I want to say, he has had an insane hard-on for the big buff dudes, to the detriment of all the other wrestlers. And so with
this man just likes big dudes.
Yeah. And so with dudes like Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns being very traditionally masculine and, these big dudes, he fucking gives them the world. He gives them everything. He's like, "Oh yeah, let's fucking go." And it's began to wear thin on the fan base more so in recent years. Triple H coming in and taking over was great, because it's not only did he bring back talent that Vince had fired with no apparent reason. The just match quality improved in terms of the choreography.
Sure.
It got a little more brutal at the pay-per-views. You started to see blood again, which hasn't happened in a long time.
Damn.
Now he denies that they brought back the practice of blading. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, but I imagine there's some sort of theatrics with it.
Yeah, so in the old days, it was very common for either a referee to have like a shaving, like a little razor blade on hand, or for a wrestler to like hide it in their gear somewhere. And when they needed to bleed, they would take it out really quickly, just like give themselves a tiny cut on the forehead, and then hide it again. Those are my dogs going crazy. But yeah, and so they would just very quickly nick themselves, hide the blade again, and then bam, you got a shower of blood. Looks dramatic, looks great. Bam.
Okay.
And that was just a common practice.
Sure.
And so Triple H claims that they weren't doing that again, but there was some pretty there was some pretty consistent bleeding in the pay-per-view events, that it was like, okay, like, it's it's awfully convenient that it's only happening on pay-per-view and not on television, where they're more susceptible to like the rating system,
Right.
you
Right.
know. But I digress. Storylines were going great. um a lot of the wrestlers that came back, especially Cody Rhodes, were having really great runs. And then at this last WrestleMania, it all kind of fell apart during the second night, because Vince had managed to force himself back into the company right before this last WrestleMania.
And that's not a part of the plot.
No, no, it's all real outside of the. It's called kayfabe, the in-universe canon of professional wrestling. So completely outside of kayfabe, Vince forced himself back into the company, and yeah, that night two of WrestleMania was just, oh my god. And then the Monday Night Raw afterwards was even worse. And then the day after that, it's, we got sold to Endeavor. So it's like, oh, okay, okay.
So I gotta ask, what makes like a night of pro wrestling? What makes it bad? When you're like, it was just weird, and then Monday Night Raw was like, is it just like a weird energy with the fighters, or
So there's definitely a weird energy with the fighters. There's definitely matches. The pace of a match tends to be boring. Uh, it's because when you have a wrestling match, there's a flow that you can follow. You
sure?
know, you have them starting out slow, and then, the moves get bigger and bigger. They start doing, all the crazy slams and jumps and all that as it goes, as it approaches the climax, and then, big finish, big win, etc., etc. um and the matches just kind of plodded along. There was uh no real sense of momentum.
Mhm.
Another thing too that Vince is really guilty of is that, so each wrestler has their kind of like their move that they do, that
Right.
is referred to as their finisher. And that's supposed to be the move that when they do it, it puts you away. And
Okay.
it's become sort of an epidemic under Vince McMahon that a wrestler will land multiple finishers during a match, and the opponent will still kick out of them when they try to pin, which takes away all of the weight
The kind
from
of
a finisher.
yeah, right. The drama of it.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of shitty.
And then you have storylines that just kind of repeat ad nauseum without really going anywhere. And
Sure.
it's, yeah, it just
Oh,
gets really bad. And then Monday Night Raw, the Raw after WrestleMania, someone did the math. Only about 30% of the entire 3-hour episode was actual wrestling. The rest were just the wrestlers talking to each other. It's referred to as cutting promos. The rest were all promos.
interesting.
Now, there's nothing wrong with promo work. Like, promos are great. They're a vital part of the whole experience. But I mean, the day after WrestleMania, and only 30% is actual wrestling.
So I gotta ask, just on average, again, as a layman on this, how much is the pay per view usually? Is it like $50, $60?
Normally, yes.
Okay,
I have a Peacock subscription, so it's
gotcha.
included with
That's cool.
that. Yeah, and it's only like $5 a month. So I'm like, that's a fucking steal.
Right. Um. Okay. And then Monday Night Raw is on just TV, so you can get it for free.
Yeah.
If you have like cable, okay, cool.
Yeah, I watch it
Interesting.
on Hulu. So
Okay.
I get an edited down version of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. When they're released on streaming services, they're released the day after they come out on they show on TV.
Okay.
And they're edited down to an hour and a half so that you only get like the necessary stuff.
Okay.
Because I
That
mean,
makes sense.
I love professional wrestling, but 6 hours a week, I can't do that.
Right. You also have a life.
Yeah.
So is there like seasons for wrestling? Or is it
Um,
just perpetual throughout the year?
it's it's perpetual throughout the year in terms of the programming.
Okay.
As far as the pay-per-view events, there are 2 months out of the year that there's no event.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So they're just going.
Yeah,
So when they have like a title fight for belts, is that like once a year, or is that just something that's constantly like someone can get your belt and then they are the champion at that point?
it's pretty constant. And
Gotcha.
that's one of the big things that I prefer about Mexican wrestling is that they put a lot more weight on challenges for the championship, and that those only happen about once or twice a year. But
Gotcha.
like
Gotcha.
with I mean, every pay-per-view there's a championship up for grabs. And I
Right.
think Roman has defended his championship at most of the pay-per-views of his two championships at most of the pay-per-views of this last year.
Interesting. So at least for like the programming and the writing, this dude is supposed to be like pretty badass,
Yeah.
and he's gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah. And he's
Interesting.
great in the ring. And not only that, he's because they still kind of follow a traditional structure of having characters that are heroes, having characters that are villains. And right now, Roman is posed as the biggest villain in the company. They refer to them as heels. He's the biggest heel in the company because he has an entourage. He has a group. I'm throwing terms at you right now, but they call them stables. So his stable is called the Bloodline, and it's made up of his family members. There are other wrestlers there that are pretty loosely related to him outside of kayfabe. I want to say, um, but in kayfabe, they're all cousins, and they basically adopt a format of them being a Pacific Islander tribe,
Okay.
with Roman being the tribal chief, and that's how he's announced. Oh, the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. In the picture that I sent you, the bald man giving him sex face in the back is his manager, Paul Heyman, one of the greatest fucking minds in the WWE. That man is amazing. But anyways, Paul Heyman is the wise man of the tribe, so he advises Roman when storyline things happen, and he's like, oh, okay, you should do this, you should do that, etc., etc.
And he's like kind of part of the show too, as
Right,
like the counselor or like counsel to Roman Reigns. Then
right.
gotcha. Okay.
And in every single match that Roman has had, the bloodline will come in and interfere on his behalf, and they do it in a way where the referee doesn't catch them.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it would be grounds for disqualification, etc., etc. So, so
And people love that.
Roman has essentially been cheating this whole time to retain the titles.
Interesting.
And it's made for great entertainment. The first 10 times it happened.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this though: is there like a protagonist?
uh sort of. Sort of, yeah. You could say that. There was another wrestler named Sami Zayn that basically, as a ploy to kind of gain respect in the locker room, he sucked up to the bloodline to be accepted as one of them. He ended up really getting into it and regarding them as his family once they accepted him and all that. And that put him into conflict with another wrestler that is a good friend of his.
Interesting. Okay.
It got to the point where he had to choose between the bloodline and his friend. He chose his friend and started, rebelling against the bloodline. And he's already had his shot to win the titles off of Roman and to disband the bloodline, and he lost.
Mm.
So now they have him fighting. They have him fighting other members of the bloodline, but not Roman.
Interesting. So, do you think he's gonna fight Roman?
No, no. They brought in another wrestler who had actually made his comeback at last year's WrestleMania. It's a dude named Cody Rhodes. Comes from a wrestling family. His dad is a super famous wrestler. He came back. He was doing his thing. He had to take 9 months off due to a really bad pec injury. And then when he came back, they put him in a storyline where he's going after Roman's belts. And one of the big upsets of this last WrestleMania was that everyone was expecting Cody to beat Roman and to win the belts off of him, and that would be it. Roman's reign of terror would be over.
Mm-hmm.
Except he didn't, and Roman still won. The bloodline came in, they did their thing, and Roman still won.
Right.
But it's weird because what they're doing is that he still wants to go after the belts, but they're delaying it in the weirdest way possible. So like, okay, I'm gonna get into this a little bit. Okay, so big match at WrestleMania. Cody fights Roman. The bloodline interferes. Sami Zayn and his friend come out to defend Cody. It's like wave after wave, coming out. Cody still comes out on top. He's about to beat Roman. And it's honestly, it seemed really cheap the way that they did this, but a member of the bloodline who had already been kicked out of the ring by the referee that night came back, knocked Cody out, and then Roman was able to pin him and get the win. So the next night, he's like, okay, if I'm going to have to fight the two of you anyways, then let's make it official. Me versus the two of you. And they're like, well, how about this? Let's make it a tag team match instead, but whoever chooses to be your tag team partner has to forfeit the right to come after these championships in the future. Just basically like a little ploy to make sure no one elects to be Cody's partner.
Right.
So Brock Lesnar comes out. Because he had lost to Roman twice before, once at WrestleMania and once at SummerSlam, he's already barred from trying to win those championships again, so he has nothing to lose. So he comes out, announces himself as Cody's partner, all's well and good, and then he just decides to attack Cody, and that's where we are right now, playing out this weird little side story with Cody and Brock and putting the whole Roman thing on hold.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the state that we're in now that Vince is back.
So you think it's clearly a bad thing that Vince is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then he went and he sold the company out from under everyone's feet. There is a rumor that there's going to be a mass exodus of talent once their contracts run out. But that's, it's a rumor. It has very little weight.
Have people? I know in the past people tried to start other wrestling foundations to compete.
Hmm.
Is that something that is on the table or no?
It's possible because a new wrestling promotion has popped up in the last few years and has been extremely successful. It's called AEW. It stands for All Elite Wrestling. And they actually poached several high-profile wrestlers from WWE. They've already made a pretty big name for themselves with former WWE talent.
Interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of people are thinking like, oh, okay, like everyone's probably going to go to AEW and start, beefing that up. And yeah, so it's interesting to see where it's going to go,
Right.
especially because part of the deal with Endeavor was one of the stipulations was that Vince stays on.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so Vince's daughter Stephanie actually resigned in protest. So
So they don't get along then, huh?
no, he it's very well known that Vince is an asshole, a huge asshole.
Interesting.
But
Well, he
like I
plays the
mean,
character. Like I think half of it's like. Do you ever ask yourself like how much of this is just like it might be the story within the story?
all the time.
Yeah,
All the
like they're
time.
actually all like friends in Vince McMahon that actually like totally not an asshole, and it's just part of the like the the bigger plot that we don't see, the Inception plot, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, like it happens a lot that wrestlers will go onto like talk shows or podcasts or whatever, and they'll seemingly be out of character and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is how it is, this and that. And they'll, like, let's say they talk shit about someone that they work with, like, oh yeah, this guy's not professional, he's whatever.
Hmm.
But and then you find out on the next episode that was part of the storyline, and
Right.
now this wrestler's mad because he was bad mouthed on this talk show, and now they have beef. So
Yeah.
it's hard to separate the two, to the kayfabe from reality.
Well, it's gonna be interesting because I'm pretty sure if Vince McMahon was ousted and then he came back, and now as part of the Endeavor group, he's like on again. It's got to be part of the plot.
Maybe, who knows?
I don't know. Just from the outside, but I know that. So a lot of just like on different forums that I peruse, some significant video game forums and then other trash like Reddit. Um, People are like, "Oh my god, Vince McMahon is out," and like, so whether it's an act or not, people believe it. And so it's interesting, and I guess in that sense, it is the highest form of entertainment. Um,
Well, I think it's very it's more indicative than not that it's real, given how much the product itself changed, I think.
sure.
Because there were some really big changes that happened once Vince was out, for that time that he was out. It was almost a complete 180 that the WWE had done, that a lot of people, especially like older fans who stopped watching it, were like, yo, this is looking great, and they were getting back into it.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it's weird is that it's just hard to know.
Yeah, it's we just have to wait and see, really.
So
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 yeah,
yeah.
so
When's the
that's how
next
that's
big
going.
match?
The next big one is WrestleMania Backlash. The uneasy ghosts of WrestleMania are coming back for their reckoning, and that's going to be on May 6th.
Damn, all right. So
So
usually there's the big WrestleMania once a month.
WrestleMania itself is every April,
Okay.
and then
So it's just once a year.
Yeah, and then they
Damn.
have
All
they
right.
have other big events, pay-per-view events, almost every month, but they're not as big as WrestleMania.
Gotcha. And then WrestleMania tours, I think, right? They just do it in different states.
They all do.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, what's really funny is that they had a pay-per-view event last year in Saudi Arabia. It was
No
called
shit.
Crown Jewel. And you think, like, how is that going to work with the women's division? Because it's just like the men, they come out in what amounts to basically underwear, athletic underwear,
Sure.
and they do their thing, right?
Well, they've had UFC fights out there, right? Or I guess that's Abu Dhabi. Or
I
wherever
don't
it
know.
was, like the UAE, like Fight Island or whatever that
Mhm.
was. It's its own little country or something. They'll do fights during COVID because they're on like their own little island.
Well, here's the thing. Um, let me see. This is what they ended up doing. I'm sending you a picture right now.
Let's see.
All of the women, all of the female wrestlers basically had to work in fucking bodysuits.
Oh no.
Yeah. They had them all covered up. And yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was funny too because when we were watching it, there were so many people that we spotted in the crowd that, like, you know how when you see someone who's supposed to be, like, I guess working security is a good way to say, but someone who's supposed to be keeping an eye on the situation, they're disguised as a civilian, but you can just tell, like, oh, this guy's here for something else.
Right.
We saw several of those in the audience at Crown Jewel, and we were just joking that, like, oh, they're making sure that the women don't show any skin. They're right there waiting to fucking just turn that place
packed
upside
over in
down.
Saudi Arabia? Were people stoked?
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing too, they were quiet for most of the women's matches, and they got super hyped for the men's matches.
Women can't fight. Oh, that reminds me. Okay. Do you mind if we do a slight pivot?
Oh, go for it.
Okay. So certain young members of my family have just discovered that Taco Tuesday is a thing, right?
Okay.
And they're at the age where they're like, "What's a taco? Oh, let's have a taco." So, of course, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna get some ground beef, gonna get some guac,
Oh,
get
Jesus
some,
Christ.
do the whole thing,
Oh,
the
Jesus
hard
Christ.
tacos,
Yeah.
the tortillas,
Your white
and
people
so-
tacos.
Right. We had cultural appropriation night, and we put on the Three Caballeros on Disney Plus.
Okay.
And this is the cartoon that is going to teach kids about, South America and Central America back in the 40s. So it's about as offensive as you could be. And I was just thinking, it's funny because I'm watching this, and I remember I watched it as a kid too. And I love Three Caballeros, and they're Caballeros. You're gonna make fun of me.
Caballeros.
Yeah, there you go. And it's interesting because I think at the time when Disney was making this cartoon, it probably was seen as progressive because it was like, we're teaching kids about other countries.
Yeah.
Even though it's like super questionable the way that cultures are portrayed. But I'm thinking, like, it's interesting how that changes with the time of what's appropriate.
Yeah.
But in the end, the tacos were delicious. So
nice. And on that note, put Song of the South on Disney Plus, you fucking cowards.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, Zippity Doo-Dah is a jam. I haven't watched the movie
It
in a
won the
long
Oscar for
time.
best original song.
It's a jam.
Yeah.
Now I haven't watched the movie in a long time. I imagine there's certain things in that movie um that might be problematic. Well, that they're gonna say are problematic. Like, I mean, I don't even. I feel we're getting into it in the podcast, but there is a scene where is it Brer Rabbit or Brer Fox? One of them falls into like the pit of tar, and he has a name that is a reference to that has been used to be a racial slur.
Well, here's the thing. Let me tell you. There's an interesting thing about that phrase. It actually means something completely different. Its use as a slur is sort of a historical misconception.
Interesting.
So what it is that Brer Fox is trying to catch Brer Rabbit because he wants to eat the motherfucker.
Right.
And he's like, okay. So what he does is he constructs a little person, you could say it's a baby, made of tar, and
Yeah,
he puts clothes on it. And he kind of sits it around where Brer Rabbit walks around. Now, this is what I find to be extremely funny about this story, is that Brer Rabbit walks by, he sees what he assumes is a person sitting there, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? And he continues walking. And obviously, with it being an inanimate object, it doesn't respond, but Brer Rabbit doesn't know that. And it upsets him. He's appalled at the rudeness of whoever this is that he said hi to. And they didn't have the decency to respond. So he turns around and he's like, hey, I said hi. Of course, it still doesn't respond, but he doesn't realize it's an inanimate object.
Right.
So he gets so mad that he walks up to it and punches it.
Naturally, when people don't respond to you, you attack them.
Exactly. And like that, just a quick aside, that just cracks me up that he knew that Brer Rabbit was enough of a narcissistic prick that he's like, this is how I'm going to get him. He's going to say hi to it. He's going to assume it's rude and he's going to beat its ass.
Have you watched Song of South recently?
No, but I know this story.
Okay, because I remember it being like at least like I liked it as a kid. And it's interesting because it's odd that especially the direction that Disney's gone with retheming Splash Mountain to it's so silly. Tiana's co-op, I guess.
Yeah.
Like how intersectional can you get? Do you know, right? It can't even be her own business. It's got to be a co-op.
Yeah.
And it's silly. And it's funny because that's not even in the movie. And so we need to have a Disney episode at some point where we just talk shit. But
oh god,
there's a lot of shit to talk. And don't get me wrong, as Luch knows, I fucking love Disney.
Yeah, K-Anon, but big on the Disney train.
Right, but there's so much shit to talk. So anyway,
yeah. So
go.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So he's punching the baby, and as he's hitting it, obviously it's made of tar, so it keeps getting stuck to him. Mm-hmm. Eventually, he gets so tangled up in it that he can't move, and that's when Brer Fox comes in and attacks him. And so, he does the typical thing. He outsmarts him, whatever, he escapes. But the point is that the term tar baby actually means a situation that is only worsened by your involvement. And it derives its meaning from that story.
From the Song of the South story?
Well, from the original fable.
Like the folk tale.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, because the situation for Brer Rabbit only worsened the more he laid into the fucking thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I always assumed it had the racial component.
Well, that's how it's
The modern connotation.
yeah, that's how it's represented, because my girlfriend said the same thing, but I was like, well, no, doesn't that mean something else? Like, but yeah.
Interesting. Well, learn something.
Yeah,
It's
no,
funny because even when we put on the three caballeros, yeah, I can't do it. But Disney had their their trigger warning at the beginning.
yeah.
Just like, okay,
Hmm.
you're fine. You're fine, Disney. You're okay.
You know, if you can't handle watching cartoons, here you go. Bam, there's a little warning for you.
Well, I do remember watching a lot of cartoons as a kid that were from like the 40s during World War II.
Oh, yeah.
There are actual racist epitaphs in there that you're like,
Yeah.
oh my god, when
Oh,
it was like
man.
for the war effort. And so
I mean, hearing you haven't truly lived until you've heard Bugs Bunny call a Japanese man slant eyes.
oh my god. Yeah. So
Or Donald Duck yell Heil Hitler.
Holy shit, dude. There we go. This is the culture episode.
Yeah, right. By the way, I'm aware that Bugs Bunny is not Disney. Just, 40s
No,
cartoons being all crazy.
The cartoons
Yeah.
were. Well, it's funny because even my grandmother, I talked to her, before she passed, and she said that they would find there was, I guess, a beetle they called the Japanese beetles, and they'd crush them because they thought they were doing their part. And I was like, holy shit.
Wow.
Like, what a wild world. Yeah, right?
Wow.
and she's like, yeah, I wouldn't really think anything of it. And so just a hop, skip, and a jump away from different generations. But besides the point, I have to ask, Luch, have you finished Resident Evil 4 Remake?
No.
Okay.
No, I've gotten have you finished it?
I did, yes.
Okay. I am just past the part where you're with Luis and you like board up the windows.
Oh, the house, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think so far?
Yeah, so far I love it. I've really been liking it. It's been making me just extremely excited for what I hope is the inevitable Resident Evil 5 remake.
I don't know if they're gonna remake Resident Evil 5. In fact, I would
not.
argue that they won't, simply because of the context now.
Yeah.
They can't really get, like, you can have Leon shooting all the Spaniards you want, but when it comes to other cultures, there's going to be a lot of issues thrown Capcom's way.
Well, it's like we say in our other episodes, violence is okay as long as it's against white people. So you can run around shooting Spaniards and stuff all you want, but as soon as they drop you into Africa and you start popping heads, oh, there's a problem.
Well, that's what I think, that right now I don't know any way that Capcom or anybody, especially in the current climate, would be okay with that occurring. And I know that even if you took out certain sections of the game, that you're like,
which they shouldn't, because
I've
none of it
played,
is problematic.
I think I played it back in, what year did it come out? 2009?
Yeah, it came out in 2009.
Yeah, and I was like, holy shit. But you gotta think, when they made the game.
No, you don't have to think that, because none of it is problematic.
Well, okay, no, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't think there's anything they weren't trying to make a racist game whatsoever. I think that when they probably designed it, they were probably like, oh, you know, you go to like the tribal part of Africa, and here's like the tribes, and you can tell how evil, you know, Wesker is in the company with Ouroboros and all this stuff. And look what they're doing, and a sequence made for some interesting gameplay situations, especially with like the shields and stuff. But But I even think now, if you have anywhere in Africa and you're Chris Redfield running around in Africa shooting anybody, people will be like, "Oh my god!" You know they would lose their shit.
Well, they lost their shit when the game was initially announced. Even back then, people made a stink about it, because if you notice, especially in like the first like village portions of Resident Evil 5, there aren't a lot of black people. There's a character model that looks vaguely Asian, and there's a character model that's straight up just Toby from The Office. There's one that looks like Saddam Hussein, and it's very unrealistically diverse in a part of Africa that is not at all diverse.
Yeah, that's what was interesting.
It really kind of stinks of that, of just like placating, you know, the ignorant masses that love to cry racism.
Well, I don't think things were as crazy back in 2009. I think it got way worse about 10 years later. That you literally have, I would even, you just have people that are just crazy. And, you know, they will do whatever it takes in the name of virtue to, you know, come out of a company. But I know that there was some argument about there being issues, but I remember the initial trailers dropping for Resident Evil 5, and it looked like they were inspired by Ridley Scott's Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
And that kind of made sense, because when that movie came out, it was huge. And it changed action movies a little bit, mostly for the better. And even then, it wasn't quite there. We have far better action now.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of one of the transitional movies where, like, you're moving to realistic action in a combat film.
Yeah.
And so that was the idea. But like with Sheva being involved, who is, for you know listeners, that's the second character, and she's an African woman. And I guess I don't want to say they got away with it, but that game sold just a shit ton. It sold so well. And I'll be honest, it's still probably my favorite co-op experience I've ever played in a game. It's super fun. And it's interesting because Resident Evil 6, you're shooting a bunch of Chinese people, but nobody gives a shit.
Yeah, no one gave a shit. I mean, they'll probably give a shit now, especially because it's like, oh, the C virus, and you know, you're shooting people in China, the source of the outbreak, and yeah. They're wearing their Oni masks and twirling fucking swords at you and shit.
G beat 6?
No, I don't think I have.
God,
you know, and here's a big difference that I do want to cite. A lot of people have cited the indigenous tribal enemies from Resident Evil 5 as being culturally insensitive, when in fact there are still communities that have that keep that lifestyle in Africa. There are still tribes out there doing their thing, you know, and that's great. There is nobody in China running around twirling swords and shit, but no one gave a shit about that.
Yeah,
and here's the thing too. Here's the thing. It's even with Resident Evil 4 in Europe, rural Spaniards have a reputation for being backwards and unevolved and all this crazy shit. Like, it's for being the one that was so scrutinized upon release, it's the installments around Resident Evil 5 that were more culturally insensitive. But no one talks about that. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how one gets singled out, even though Capcom doesn't discriminate. They go after everybody,
which is great. I love that.
They're going after the white suburban Americans in Raccoon City. People are like, I'm gonna kill these fucking zombies.
Exactly. It's a metropolitan area. You're fucking. I'm surprised they didn't go the full Dawn of the Dead route where you're in a shopping mall. Oh, I'm gonna kill all these fucking zombies. Like,
right. But plus, it's odd is that nobody cares about the race after they're dead. They're zombies until it comes to Resident Evil 5.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, careful.
And even then, it completely escapes them that the villain is literally a blonde white man.
Right.
And it's like they even make a point in the game to say like, oh, Wesker, ruined these people. He fucked them up. He's, Tricell destroyed this landscape and but no, you can't win because the kind of people that have these huge issues with it are just they're beyond sensible thought.
Well, not only that, to be honest though, these also are not fans of the game.
True.
And these are just activists.
True. Yeah. So I'm
like,
holding out hope.
I'll even consider myself a feminist. I would go that far, but my idea of feminism is going to be different than your typical proggy now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because a character like Anita Sarkeesian, who did Feminist Frequency and just came into the video game world as an outsider, she doesn't actually like video games. And I think that's what the thing is. I can't take her seriously. She's an activist that saw a market.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a lot of people are like, Resident Evil 5, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't actually play the game. They didn't actually they couldn't critically assess the things going on like you just did, talking about Wesker, Tricell, Excella, Sheva, and what's the other guy's name in BSAA?
Josh.
Yeah.
Josh was badass, man. I love Josh.
Yeah, he was great. And there's also like healthy representation of Africans defending their homeland, but no one says anything about that. Like, no one says like, you're still as Sheva, you're running around those villages shooting dudes.
Yeah. And there is no positive representation of Asian people in Resident Evil 6.
Ada.
That's not positive.
I mean, you play as her.
Yeah, but that's not positive. She's still the villain.
She's kind of like an anti-hero.
She kills all of the fucking people that Chris had and drives them half insane. And like, there's, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't call Ada positive representation.
But anyway, going back to it, all this is wrong though because the next game that Capcom should remake is
Code Veronica.
Yeah,
definitely. No, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed for Resident Evil 5.
Well, it's interesting because
my fingers crossed.
It's looking like they could just fly through the series using the RE engine, and every time they put out a game, it's gold.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got me, dude. I will buy every single RE engine remake.
Dude, oh fuck! Just I was playing Resident Evil 4 with my sister last night, and I noticed I was like, yo, when you move from an area of like a light area into a dark area, there you need some time for your eyes to adjust before you can actually see what's going on in that darker area.
Yeah, there's a lot to be stoked about for that for the game.
And well, that specifically, I remember that being one of the earliest reported features of Resident Evil 5 that didn't get made, that didn't make it into the game.
Well, it's just funny. Like, I remember the trailers when Chris would go from a dark and go outside, and it was all bright, and eventually like your eyes would settle. And do you remember that first trailer that was out like 2 years before the game was out, and you're like, this looks crazy.
Yeah.
Where like that little tarp on top and it goes away and it's suddenly super bright and he has to have his arm in front of his face. They did not utilize that.
Unfortunately not. But that's why I have my fingers crossed, because now they can. They're doing it in 4. Oh god. And just I love all of the additions in 4. And I played the Mercenaries mode, and it was fucking incredible.
I haven't done Mercenaries yet. Unfortunately, I'm the guy. I already deleted the game, which sucks. Because I have the 1 terabyte on the PS5, and I had to make room for Horizon, which came out an hour ago.
Ugh.
So that's next on my list.
Okay.
So,
well, you got to try Mercenaries at some point. It's awesome. It's really fun.
Well, I believe it, and I wanted to platinum RE4, but looking at it, you had to play through it like 6 times. I just don't have that kind of time anymore.
True.
And so
maybe someday in the future.
Right, and I can kind of have it in the back burner, but there's even games I haven't played yet that I need to play. But that being said, have you seen anything? Did you play Horizon at all or no?
No, it's something I do want to play it. But other than that, like, nah, like I haven't really. The extent of my involvement was laughing at the fucking knee-jerk misogynists who were like, oh, why'd they make Alloy or Aloy, however you pronounce it, ugly in Horizon 2? It's just the feminists fucking up games. And I was like, bro, she was ugly in Horizon 1. The fucking that game has some of the ugliest looking character models I've ever fucking seen in my life.
I don't mind it. I think it's fine. And
Like,
talk about if you like zoom in really close, you can see like little peach fuzz on her face or whatever.
Yeah, that's what they were talking about. And I'm like, how about you complain about the fact that all of their heads are shaped like boxes, their cheekbones are too big, and their eyes are too small? How about that?
I think you're being hard at it.
But nah, people hate the peach fuzz.
What's the name of that engine? But the same engine that it's the Killzone engine, and I don't know if it's exactly the Killzone engine. I think it's a heavily modified version of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look up the name of the engine. Hold on.
Okay.
It has a cool name, and it was an engine that legitimately, when Kojima came over to do Death Stranding for Sony, 1 second, Horizon engine. Decima, thank you. Decima engine. They literally handed it to Kojima and said, "Yep, here you go. Here's Decima." Yeah, it was cool. And so Death Stranding uses it. Killzone Zero Dawn used it, and it looked great. So I like the way the characters look in there. I'm happy with it.
Okay.
The animations are far better in the second game. But I do have an issue, and I don't quite know. You said you're going to play the games?
Yeah.
It's a little bit spoilerly. I'm not sure if I won't get into it. We'll talk another time.
Okay.
But so I'll end up playing that
for sure.
I think what else what else is on the docket?
Well, it is April. That means Alien Day is this month.
Oh, yeah, April 26th.
Yeah, so we got some shit coming up. First off, Aliens Fireteam is coming to Nintendo Switch, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Apparently, it's going to be like a streaming build, like they did with The Witcher and Alien Isolation. I haven't played either on Switch, so I don't know if they're going to be good. But it's all I wholeheartedly support Aliens games coming to as many people as possible.
I heard Witcher 3 plays great. I haven't heard anything about Isolation.
Okay. Did you like Isolation? You play it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, Isolation's awesome.
It was fan. Well, okay, I wouldn't say I've played it. More so that a mutual friend of ours walked me through it.
Gotcha.
In terms of like, yeah, like he was like, okay, yeah, just go here, do this, do that, and I was like, okay.
I would say that it's likely my favorite game of all time.
It's
Just
so good.
what they did with it and the world they built, and us being Aliens fans. Jesus, it's just
It's
like
so
I think we're lucky we live in a world where we got that game.
yeah. I
So
much prefer though the other game modes where you kind of just you pick your character and you just go for it.
yeah, it's kind of fun that they set it up like they did.
Yeah.
There is a I've gone through every single one of those modes. The only one I haven't done is when you have to do all of the bonus levels together and not die,
Ooh.
and that just got a little stressful. And so I like my blood pressure where it is. Um, but yeah, isolation was great. But that being said, I don't know. I feel like since Disney has had the helm of the Alien franchise, I've been a little disappointed in Alien Day.
hmm
They haven't been doing a lot for it, but we have a lot coming up for Aliens. We have the FX TV series coming up,
Yeah.
as well as the new movie.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Romulus, whatever. They're
I mean,
Is
if
that what
Ridley
wasn't
Scott's
it the-
doing it, I'm not excited for it. Not if Ridley Scott's doing it.
Well, he's not doing it. But he's like the executive producer. I think he's the executive producer on both of them. And it's just hard for me to get excited about anything coming out for Alien, just Alien. Period. Have you seen the concept art for the TV show?
No, I
Okay,
haven't.
check this out. I'll pull it up for you.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I know we're getting a new horde mode map for Fireteam Elite,
Oh, we are.
so that should be cool.
Perfect. Do you know
Um,
when?
yeah, Alien Day.
Oh, okay, on Alien Day. Okay, for sure. And there's also
So
another game coming out, Aliens Dark Descent.
yeah, I saw that there's even been people who played it.
No shit.
Uh, yeah, and you can kind of see their reactions because it's coming out in June, so it's like 3 months away.
Oh, damn. It looks kind of like an isometric version of what was that one called? Extermination for the DS?
Yeah, so Extermination was interesting that because that was really like a Metroidvania, and you had 4 team members of Marines, but you
Yeah,
had to switch through them. And if one died,
that was it.
it was like a permanent thing, and it sounds like that's the direction they're going. Um, it seems like that's the direction they're going to go with this game. It seems really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited
Um,
for it.
it reminds me of Truth Be Told. Did you ever see like the original screenshots and concept for Aliens Clone Marines back when it was supposed to be a
Yes.
PS2 game?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of, which is a squad-based shooter.
hmm
And it's funny because even when Gearbox took over Aliens Clone Marines, they're gonna make it more of a Brothers in Arms style shooter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm excited for it, and yeah. So we'll kind of see what direction that goes in.
No, yeah, fucking it's well, like what I'm hoping for is something like Helldivers. That would be
I don't.
incredible.
I don't think we're gonna get that. I think we're gonna get kind
Well,
of a
well, technically, Fireteam is kind of Helldivers, just over the shoulder.
right. Fireteam Elite is gonna be more Helldivers than this game. This game seems like did you ever play Full Spectrum Warrior back on the PS2 and Xbox One? Not the Xbox One, the OG Xbox. So this
No.
would have been
Oh wow, this looks
old,
awesome.
yeah, old game. Oh, you seen the screenshots?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
the top
shit.
one looks like a crashed Weyland-Yutani ship in a city.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
fuck that.
and so it's gonna be interesting.
Like
And while we're go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, honestly, I feel like if Fireteam was the last Aliens game that we got and it just kept getting more content, I'd be fine with that. Honestly.
I wish it did get more content. I enjoy the game a lot. It hasn't been released on PlayStation Plus, so a free platform that would really kind of bulk up the content. But Aliens fans like us are stupid because we'll buy anything that comes out, and I think that these companies know that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they do. We're a bunch of
yeah.
bitches.
um. Anyway, what else we got going on in the world of entertainment?
Well, you had mentioned feminism earlier, which
Sure.
segues into Alien very, very well. But I rewatched The Silence of the Lambs recently.
You like that movie though.
Yes. It's for those of you at home, that is my number one favorite movie of all time. Amazing fucking movie. And it was just has it ever happened to you where you watch a movie that you've seen this movie hundreds of times, you know it like the back of your hand, and you sit down and you watch it, and for some reason it just hits extra hard this one time you watch it, and you're like, wow.
I just like the song "Goodbye Horses."
Well, that's how it was watching this movie this last time. It just, oh my god, everything hit so perfectly. I was just like, man, what an incredible fucking movie. It's like, oh god. Especially there's a scene right before the climax where Clarice realizes that because she's at Buffalo Bill's house, but she doesn't know that it's him.
Mhm.
When she realizes that it's him, do you remember that?
I don't remember the exact scene. It's been a minute since I watched it, but it's a good movie.
So, so she's following the lead of the very first Buffalo Bill victim,
Right.
and so she follows it to a house of a woman who used to employ her as like a seamstress or something like that.
Hmm.
And when she gets there, Buffalo Bill is living there under the name Jack Gordon.
As she a great big fat lady.
Yeah, well, she's a great big fat person.
Right, there you go.
So, not knowing that it's him, Clarice is still asking for the woman that used to live there, and he's like, "Oh, like she died some time ago, but I think I have her son's card." And he invites her inside.
Uh-huh.
And so she's just kind of there, like, looking around. She's aware of her surroundings, but she's sort of making idle conversation. And, the dude being a tailor has, like all these like spools of yarn. And she's looking at the spools, and a death's head moth lands on one of the spools. And you see her face, her expression changes without changing at all. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
She sees the moth and she's like, holy shit.
But Jodie Foster she's a good actress.
And then the way she looks at him once she makes the realization, and he comes back with the card and he's like, oh yeah, I have the card for you. And he sees the way that she's looking at him and he realizes that she knows.
Right.
It's fucking incredible. And then like the music starts to swell, and it's like this really weird, it's not like a heroic music swell like when they're turning the ship around in Jaws, oh, I'm coming around for another one. It's a very unnerving, kind of droning that starts to swell up while she's like they're both coming to that realization, and she's telling him, all right, put your hands up, put, like all this kind of shit. And then, he runs off into the kitchen, and the chase ensues. But like, God, that's the kind of filmmaking that fucking that gives you shivers. And
Yeah, it's good. I gotta ask you something.
what's up?
Do you think that they could make that movie the same way again with Buffalo Bill and kind of the sexual deviancy of him without there being politics involved?
No.
Yeah.
No, and it's unfortunate. Like, I mean, it's unfortunate that audiences wouldn't be able to see past what they think is misrepresentation of transgender people.
Mhm.
And there's really nothing you can do about it, because even in the original, even in the film, Hannibal explicitly says he isn't a transsexual, he just thinks he is.
Right.
It's explicitly said in that it's just self-loathing that he misconstrues as gender dysphoria. And even Ted Levine in interviews said that when he got the part, one of the first things he did was to go to transgender bars and all that to kind of get a feel for the community.
Mhm.
And he very quickly realized that he was barking up the wrong tree. He's like, no, wait, this has nothing to do with what the character's doing, because they're just people like you and me. They just want to be comfortable in who they are.
Right.
And it's completely separate from this kind of hatred, this kind of violence that is inherent to Buffalo Bill.
Right.
But no one stops to think about that anymore. There's no nuance
Mhm.
anymore when it comes to that kind of discussion. So yeah, so it definitely wouldn't be able to to be made now, which hasn't stopped people from trying, but
Yeah, it's funny because there's still a lot of pedigree behind Silence of the Lambs. It's interesting.
well, not just that, but the IP is still being adapted.
Right.
We had
I guess
the
that's a better
Hannibal
way
show,
to say it. Yeah.
which I think is almost 10 years old now, that show. But if you haven't seen it, watch it, because the first 2 seasons of that show are some of the most incredible television you will ever watch. Apart from that, there was also, I think, like a short-lived Clarice Starling show at some point.
So in the actual story, though, Clarice does fall in love with Hannibal, right?
It's not in Silence of the Lambs, no.
In Hannibal, though.
Yes, at the end of Hannibal, yeah.
Right.
And that was weird. The ending of Hannibal was really weird. The novel.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like up until the ending, I thought it was pretty, par for the course, which would be incredible. But the ending is odd. It's have you read the novel?
No.
Do you care about spoilers?
No.
Okay, so spoiler alert to the people at home. So the climax plays out pretty similarly with Hannibal attacking Paul Krenler, cutting his head open, serving his brain for dinner, etc., etc. We still get all that, but essentially what happens is that Hannibal opens up to Clarice about why he's so obsessed with her. And it's that he sees a lot of his sister in her. And I don't know if you're familiar with Hannibal's backstory, but his sister was murdered when he was a child.
Hmm.
And he was tricked into eating broth made from her bones. So,
Damn.
yeah. Yeah, it was his family were attacked by like Nazi deserters during World War II. It's this whole fucking thing. But yeah. And so what he wanted to do was he wanted to hypnotize Clarice, basically pull a liquid snake on her to make her his sister.
Okay.
And she's like, how about this instead? Bam. And she like gets naked. I mean, she pulls out her breast to like offer it to him, and they become lovers instead.
Hmm.
Yeah. I told you it was fucking weird.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that was one of those things where when it came time to make the film,
Mhm.
one of the first things Ridley Scott asked Thomas Harris was, "Are you married to that ending?" And when he was like, "No," he's like, "Okay, good." Because we're going to do something different.
Because Ridley Scott made Hannibal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did a
That
pretty damn
Hannibal.
good job of it, too.
Yeah,
Before he
it
got
was
all fucking
alright.
senile.
Right. It was alright. And that was Jodie Foster in that one too, wasn't it? Or no?
No,
No. That
it
was
was Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore.
Yeah, Jodie Foster didn't like the direction that the character had taken,
Hmm.
so she didn't want to do it.
Well, she also was like, wasn't she like freaked out during making Silence of the Lambs?
Not that I know of. No, it was mostly just a development thing because she was on board until she read the novel and then the script. Because yeah, like there's Clarice is a little more cavalier with violence in Hannibal. She's really disillusioned, and it affects her very negatively in that sense, and I think that's what she didn't agree with.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I mean in the very beginning she fucking shoots a woman who's like holding a baby. So like,
Right.
shit like that.
Interesting. Um,
Red Dragon was a better movie, I think, than Hannibal.
I confuse that with Manhunter.
Essentially the same movie, adapted from the same book.
Right.
Red Dragon was Edward Norton.
And Ray Fiennes.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that one being okay.
Yeah, I love that one. I think Brett Ratner directed that one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, great movie. Great movie.
You know who directed the original Manhunter?
Michael Mann.
Michael Mann.
The man, Michael Mann.
I like Michael Mann.
Yeah,
But who
Manhunter's
doesn't?
also a good one. I would say Manhunter is better than Hannibal.
Mm-hmm.
Not better than Red Dragon, I would say. I do like Will Graham more in Manhunter because I do think the character needs to have an element of danger to him, an element of instability,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the Hannibal TV show did so well.
Sure.
But I think overall Red Dragon was a better movie than Manhunter.
Yeah. Well, I remember Edward Norton and Ray Fiennes both doing a really good job.
Yeah. No, yeah, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Cool. How do we get on to Silence of the Lambs? Oh, you just rewatched it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm trying to think if there's I haven't been watching anything lately.
Mhm.
outside of a Star Wars show that I have not finished that, I feel like everybody else has watched. You watched all Last of Us, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Did we talk about this? We talked about this.
No, yeah. There was one thing that we didn't mention though that I did want to mention.
Yes.
Overall, The Last of Us, super disappointing. Very non-violent for a game that's supposed to be extremely violent, and all that. The first episode was great. That's what we didn't say last time.
I agree.
The
I think
first episode
was very good.
was awesome.
Yeah.
Like seeing the neighbor kind of start like choking and being weird in the background, while Joel's daughter, I forget her name. What was her name? Sarah. Yeah, while Sarah was looking through their cabinets or whatever, you just saw the old lady in the background all like, that was awesome. The little bits where they replicated the game 1-to-1, where you see like the guy's house on fire and they're like, oh, that's so and so's house, like that was really cool. I appreciated that. The plane crashing was fucking nuts.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
It was so well done because you see it, but you don't register it until you're like, oh, and then it just comes down, bam.
And it's kind of cool because clearly planes will be lining up to land and they can't. They're losing, and people are probably freaking on the planes.
Yeah.
And so it worked. I thought the first episode was good. I was happy with it.
Yeah, and that was about it. That was about the only one that was good.
I liked the mall episode too. I thought it was okay. It wasn't great, but it's okay.
I would have liked it if it had something to do thematically with the story that was being told. But, we talked about that.
Right. And in the end, the biggest disappointment of the whole season was the fact that it was, to me, I think it was a good episode, but it just didn't belong, was the Bill and Frank episode.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was very well put together. It told a complete story. And it told, honestly, a really touching story.
Sure.
It's they could have made, what were the fucking characters' names?
Bill and Frank.
They could have made, a 4-episode Bill and Frank, a Last of Us story, and done that. And it would have been that was a satisfying story that they could have done that with.
Sure.
Just as it was, it had nothing to fucking do with the story that we were watching. And it's unfortunate that it, that they had to kind of force it in the way that they did.
Sure. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. It was sad that they took budget, time, to put into that mini story that was a good story. It just took away from the main story.
No, but and it's I think, to me, the really unfortunate thing about that whole ordeal is that it ultimately means that HBO doesn't think a story about two men surviving the apocalypse can carry a show. They had to put it in this one because you know what I mean?
I don't know.
They didn't have enough faith in it to be its own story. It had.
I don't know if it was as much HBO as much as it was a creative decision. Because I think it was more interesting in the actual game when Bill finds Frank's body is kind of dealing with the fact that they had a falling out and Frank went off and died.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of, and I like the interaction between Ellie and Bill, because that's when Joel kind of has to intervene between the two of them. But no, they even said their intent was to trick people into watching a gay romance. and realizing that it's just like any other romance. Well, yeah, but like if it's gonna take an hour and 20 minutes,
Fucking
and
feature
when your
length.
two main characters don't actually talk to each other throughout the series, we have a problem. And so, yeah.
That's what
But
happens when ideology gets in the way of art.
yeah, it's just activists. Like I said, it, I mean, you said it best right there. Ideology is getting in the way of art, and you can be an activist or you can be a storyteller. Uh, sometimes you can be both, but if you're both, you're usually in that case you're probably an activist.
Unless you're Silence of the Lambs. Boom.
Yeah, but I think even looking at Silence of the Lambs or Alien or other movies that both Silence of the Lambs and Alien are horror films that are kind of like subtly feminist films that talk about they have a psychosexual analytic side of it.
I mean, subtly? I mean,
I say subtly because it's not like this is a feminist film. I mean, I guess Silence of the Lambs is
do you remember what the first shot of the Silence of the Lambs is?
Well, she's at Quantico, right?
Yeah, but do you know what she's doing in that first shot?
I can't remember.
She's running uphill.
Oh, well, there you go.
So I wouldn't say it's subtle, but
Well, a movie like Alien, sorry.
Yeah.
But it's not like this is to me now. Every movie is Zootopia.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's just awful.
Why did you have to remind me that Zootopia exists?
Like, talk about a movie where well, it's so funny because the rabbit girl and the fox guy, when they're trying to identify the bad guy, they're like, it's a predator. We know that because all the people have been predators so far. And they're like, you're right. And then she has the fucking press conference, and she's like, all we know right now is that the bad animals have been predators. And then the fox guy is like, what? You think that? Like, you just had the fucking conversation like 10 minutes before this, so you agreed on this. And of course, this is an identifying piece of information. We would know this.
Yeah.
Like, this is not actually, like, you can't really this is like the person that gets punched by somebody, like a homeless dude on the street in San Francisco, and is like, oh, I don't know, we can't call 911 because that would be, classist. Like, what? What? Like, it's so crazy.
Oh my God. Yeah, like, it's especially because, like, they try to paint her saying I was just reporting the facts as something bad.
Right, exactly,
like,
dude.
Really? And ultimately
ridiculous.
the lesson that she learns is, oh, my friend's feelings are more important than facts. Like, fuck that.
Right, or the fact that we shouldn't call out actual pertinent information because it might hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah. Or how about just the very blatantly broken fucking metaphor of using species of animals to represent race?
Oh no.
Like,
No, you're
holy
right.
shit.
You're right. It's
But what's really funny though is that, like, the movie very ironically has the villain be one of the quote unquote prey animals.
right.
So what message does that send?
Trying to me, bro.
Like, it's, oh my God. One of these animals, these individuals that has made a platform of being a victim is actually the aggressor. Gee, I wonder where we see that in real life.
Right, dude. Well, it's even coming back to Frozen and just like what's her the sister? I forget if it's Anna or Elsa, the one with the sister that's like dying. I don't know, the one that's not the Ice Queen.
Anna, yeah.
And they're like, only act of true love will save her or whatever. And they're like, this the whole time we're just sisters. And straight up, we have this Sven dude who like sacrifices his well-being, his life, and it's like, no, you gotta go. And like all these acts of true love to actually save her. And it doesn't that none of that actually matters.
Oh,
Until it's like, do you know what I'm saying? With Elsa at the end, and they're like,
no, yeah, and
we're
like
sisters.
And that's the like, and here's the thing, I really do appreciate that they did that to showcase, oh yeah, like sibling love is just as important. It doesn't have to be about romantic love
Right.
all the time. Like that's fucking great. But yeah, with the way that they treat it's his name was Christoph. The
Whatever.
way that they treat Christoph as a result is just like, wow.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But we could go on and on and on about that one. But we do need a whole episode to talk about the Star Wars sequels. I know you'd hate it, but
oh boy.
Maybe in our next culture episode. Who knows?
Oh boy, yeah. That would be oh god, that'd be a conversation and a half. But with Star Wars in mind, Lego just released they announced a set for pre-order where I don't know if you've seen, but they've been releasing sets that are kind of supposed to be little dioramas. Like they'll have like a nameplate and everything, and they're replicating different scenes from the Star Wars saga.
Okay.
They announced one for pre-order that I was like, oh, fucking like instant pre-order for me. The Emperor's Throne Room from Return of the Jedi.
All right, I gotta look this up. This sounds awesome.
It's fucking cool.
I gotta see this. Throne Room.
Yeah, so like it's so it comes with an Emperor, a Luke, a Vader. It's the little throne room with the two control consoles. The chair can swivel to face like outside the window.
Oh, this looks awesome.
And they have a grimacing head for the Emperor and like lightning bolts that he could put in his hands.
Oh man, how cool is this?
Yeah.
This is so great.
Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, so I'm like, oh, hands down. And this is my favorite scene from that movie, so it's like, oh, doubly so.
Return of the Jedi is so good.
It is. Oh,
I know. I there was a guy on one of the forums I was reading that was trying to defend The Last Jedi, and he was like, "You guys can go back to your movie with teddy bears that are utilizing guerrilla tactics." Like, okay, guy. Okay. Yeah, Return of the Jedi is great.
No, yeah,
that looks super cool, dude.
The fucking moral dilemma at the heart of that movie is just, oh, that's some chef's kiss kind of shit right there.
Have you seen the deleted scenes from the film?
Have I? I don't know. I know I heard that there was one that when Luke builds his lightsaber, the blade comes out red for a second. I've heard of that, but I don't know if that's real.
It's not real.
Okay. Yeah, that like when he builds it, he turns it on and it's red for a second, but then it turns green, and he's like, "Oh, thank goodness." But like,
right?
Yeah.
No, all we have is him building a lightsaber, and then we see him turn it on in a cave on Tatooine.
Yeah,
but
I've seen that
face
one.
is covered. Yeah, so that's at least the only one I've seen. If there's a red one, I haven't heard that. But there's one with the admiral, whatever, who is he has his doubts about the Emperor, and he has this little like going on, and they have a lot more work with Darth Vader having like a moral dilemma about Luke.
Yeah.
And it's cool. What a great saga though, and what a great just the first 3 Star Wars movie. We'll save this for the Star Wars episode because I do want to jump into that one a little bit. But
yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, but it easily an instant pre-order for me. I'm like, oh yeah, and it even has the quote there, "I'm a Jedi like my father before me." Beautiful.
It's great.
Fucking beautiful. I am so down.
It's great. This looks rad. I like it even from the outside. You have the window, and you can turn the Emperor around so he looks just evil looking outside.
Yeah.
At the Battle of Endor.
Oh man. Man, if I had a space window, I'd be watching that shit too. That'd be awesome.
I think everybody needs a space window. Let's be honest.
Yeah. No, definitely. All right, that'll be it for us tonight. Thank you all for listening. This was the Electric Luchador Podcast coming at you with a nice family-friendly dose of culture. I'm El Oscuro, the Electric Luchador. I was here with Kanon. Say goodnight, Kanon.
Good night, everybody.
And we will see you guys next time. We'll be back with some of the worst news the world has to offer.
It's just the perpetual hellscape.
All right, we'll see you guys there.